Hello and welcome to the program. I am Soren. An Indian philosopher, Meher Baba, said true love is unconquerable and irresistible and goes on gathering power and spreading itself, and until eventually it transforms everyone whom it touches. Humanity will attain to a new mode of being through the free and unhampered interplay of pure love from heart to heart. Christ at the Sermon on the Mount said, "Love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you." Archbishop Desmond Tutu, Nobel Prize winner, I'm sure you know of, said, "When things are bad, say they are bad, but don't hate the ones who do those things." Good point. By freeing our loving spirits, we can create the world of love around us, inside us, and even within the hearts of those around us. And the unconditional love can help people develop this essential power towards a fulfilling, peaceful, and loving life. There are many paths, and we can utilize on the developmental personal growth of ourselves, which are particularly unique. However, we can think of many ways to assist our personal development. In short, we can call it a technique of happiness. Each one of us, human beings, need to explore, learn, and choose the path which liberates the energies of our own body, our own mind, and spirit, the loving spirit. This science is not a belief system and is certainly not a cult. One does not need to believe in anything, whether it works or not, but it can do the task well if it is properly utilized. There are several systems one can consider in establishing this one which uses intelligence, absorbing the included wisdom, which can provide new approaches for accepting people and the conditions as they are. We can only enjoy the journey of continued personal growth. That is all. Firstly, you need to appreciate and love yourself and your life within, and that is ever needed for the inner peace. As we all know, the world we are living in can be blown up through fear, hatred among nations, and frustration. When facing these conditions, there are ways of increasing our accelerated understanding and cooperation for personal happiness and humanity's survival. We all need to empower ourselves through love, which is unconditional. Who indeed does not want to feel good about their lives, to live satisfying and fulfilling lives? What are the ways in which we can revive that instead of destroying our energies and our abilities to appreciate, to accept, and love other people and ourselves? What kind of technique can we use to help ourselves to live effective and certainly enjoyable lives? I would say that in the long run, everyone wants to do this and wants what we all want and when we wanted it. What is the end result going to be like? enjoyable, encouraging to love life, or will it be forever blaming, unhappy life, or happy life? It may be just the same for everyone. We win some and we lose some, correct? Let us observe how others feel. Sometimes ineffective, unhappy, unloving, and sometimes unable to get what they want in life. To start with, they feed their energies through what we can consider as the separate self. And this separate self quite automatically casts each situation into me against them framework. And that creates a serious and threatening as well as a stressful struggle and combat situation. And those living through such separatisms will experience life as a battleground against the other people and the world, even to themselves. Therefore, it is important to avoid such battlegrounds, separate self-habits of the mind, meaning me against my mind, and me against my personality, and me against my body, and such as me against me, and me against you wars, wearing people down while they try all kinds of strategies that seem to work to a limited fashion. They don't. Allow enjoyment, appreciation, happiness, or love of ourselves and the other people, and joy of living is gone. And so, those are the ones who are limited in separate ways, trying to get whatever they want. Sometimes they run away from situations they don't like and blame themselves or sometimes others, while trying to manipulate and control people by being quick to anger, with throwing affection and love when they dislike something, and become physically violent, intellectually judgmental, and often displaying combinations of both. They are usually respected or feared, and their lives often may seem to work fairly well on the outside. I personally have experienced such people around me, and fear chases away the experience of love inside. And so they live very separate, very isolated, and lonely lives inside, even if they are surrounded by friends and or family. This unfortunately prompts people to misunderstand us, suspect us, mistrust us, and fight us just out of the blue. These too are also in my experience, and I know now that it destroys our marriages, our employment, enjoyment of our own selves, our own families, and in the worldwide scene may result in our blowing up the whole world. Indeed, we have tried them all, and they just don't work that well. They may yield some satisfaction for some, but they let us down at the end. These habits keep us locked into creating very empty lives. Outwardly, we may appear fine to others, especially to those who love their assumptions without knowing much about the others. But inside each of us, there is something where the shoe pinches. Believe me. You might ask, what do you mean with separate self? Well, the answer to that is the programs in the brain that create the experience of our lives as a war against ourselves, against other people, and in fact, the whole world included. This is the illusionary me against you perception, which guards its addictive demands. We call it separate self syndrome. What is the opposite of separate self, would you say? It is the unified self. Again, it is the mental programming that creates a compassionate and wise insight into people and situations with complete and deeper understanding. You see, me and you program can give you an overall perspective of how everything may fit perfectly in your journey through life, for your growth and your enjoyment of living. We will call this programming as the unified self. The power we gather through insight and love does not dominate. Let us now consider a new model of power, one that does not involve any me against you pattern. This is only an empowerment that comes from within us, based on insight and love. And it is a more effective type of power, and based on our ability to work with situations and people. Its power is cooperative, not dictatorial. And it is based on understanding and caring, love, and up-leveling demands to preferences, tuning into positive intentions in which both parties feel good. Outpouring one's energy through the unified self instead of the separate self, we begin to understand that the separate self has kept us trapped in creating special personality, biased version of people around us and the circumstances of our lives, since the days when we may have lived on the trees. But we are usually surrounded by friends who have had similar separate self-illusions, making us feel very much trapped in our particular rat race, as they say. Little portion by little portion, we appreciate how the separate self we picked up as children has kept us in a jail of our own making. Now recognizing that feelings of anger, fear, and hatred are counterproductive energies of the separate self, we are beginning to note that what we were most unwilling and rejected in other people is what we must reject and not desiring in our own selves. Everything we humans do in the flow of existence is recorded in the fabric of life for the coming generations to learn from. For example, in certain countries there are different social designs where in the humans who have grown old are looked after by the families they have created without any grudge against them, without the wish that they would disappear from the face of the earth, and everybody seemed to be happy, and the elderly still keep on working, sometimes in the fields, and sometimes in the farms. They don't even worry about anything else other than the task they have at hand. They don't worry because there is no such thing as hatred, enmity, unhappiness in their lives normally. But there are also those in more affluent and rich countries where social system has been organized so that they receive a pension, which is probably enough to keep them alive, healthy, and reasonably happy. However, there is also a subsong hatred and enmity amongst their offspring. Believe it or not. What do you mean with that, you might ask? Well, they are conditioned to think, particularly during these days of our so-called modern lives, that they are paying hefty amounts of taxation to be utilized the money received by the government to pay the elderly, and this may be only partially true or not true at all, because many of those elderlies have contributed and worked very hard and paid also their own tax to the government, and so they are entitled to a pension payment to keep them afloat. And no one, particularly those who are the offspring of an elderly man or a woman, have the right to criticize this, saying, well, we are paying your pensions through our taxation, which we have to do in enormous amounts. Question: where is love of humanity in this case? Love for one's family gone? And where indeed is the care for one's own kind in this? Question mark. There is none. Not at all, other than just simple selfishness. And the world religions do teach them in their holy books how not to behave and how not to cause unhappiness and disharmony, because it all bounces back with some amplifications, so that the people who give only begrudgingly will have the same experiences and will endure the same treatments from their own offspring in times to come. That is the way life happens on earth. Will the humans of current ages learn from this experience, would you say? How many more considerations we can come up with? Let's go back to the original thought. Let us not forget that those elderly parents were once younger when they worked very hard and paid every single cent they had towards their offspring's schooling expenses, clothing, and health costs. They have not complained at all. They never said, why should I pay this amount for my child? They appreciated that their child was going to be well-educated and respectable people in their future. So here we see the workings of the unconditional love, or the opposite. Any religion or any organization or a cult, when they attempt to teach the otherwise, they are doing absolute wrong for the advancement of the humankind. I believe that the new generation of humans have to be taught also about how to be human. Let us consider that. Now, this consideration was reserved for the small unit of the society of the human beings. And there is such a controversy, such enmity, and such emptiness today. Now, let us look at the larger scale from a different angle, from a different viewpoint. Think of the nations, especially those warring against each other. But our nation is much better than them. Besides, our religion is better, our civilization is better, and our everything is better. We war and fight, and we win, and our nation will be richer. That is very noble, very nice indeed. However, knowing what we know in regards to the human life, it lasts for a little while only, and then the human being expires. The riches and all the money you have amassed and probably left for your next generations, can you take any of it with you when you expire into the other dimension? Will your next generations be able to take all that money and riches with them when they expire, because that is the way of life here on this planet Earth happens? When you consider people warring against each other, and they amass a lot of riches to create more drastic weaponry and fatal ones, They produce even unthinkable viruses to destroy one another. At the end, what is left? Humanity is at the verge of completely annihilating themselves. Where is the future? Where indeed the riches go? Question mark. When humans disappear and go into another dimension, do they need all the riches and the money they have worked hard to obtain like a slave? There remains only one thing, and that is love, unconditional, and nothing else. Let us remember that the separated self tries to find some loving relationships, but has difficulties in doing so. The unified self, however, creates loving relationships. Unified self radiates caring and helpful cooperation, which is reflected back by others like a mirror. Remember the saying, whatever you shout at a mountain, it will echo back at you. We do not need to end with a life so stressful and so serious as a daily grind. In order to achieve the reasonable things we want in our lives, it is understandable that we tend to enter into a new dimension. We need to harmonize our energies, but not in controlling other people. Criticisms and judgmental attitudes of the separate self dissolves as we make it all right to be ourselves. We need to develop patience with things which do not happen at the time and the way they have been wished for. However, we are quite capable of creating the experience of being caught in a traffic jam as a peaceful interlude, perhaps, and not otherwise. As people perceive that our love is unconditional, they trust us more to be open and real with us. When our self is unified, we can enjoy the abundance of existence, which we may have ignored until now. We seem to like the cup of life as being half full and let go of the separate self perception that is definitely half empty. We love living right now and continue being aware that we have much more than we need to feel happy and fulfilled. Is our separate self quietened? It may begin to jump up and down inside us now, only complaining. When the darkness is gradually lifted away from our daily emotions, we don't feel stressed and worried about the future. The vision is clear, and we can see that we are living in a world in which everything is in a process and a change is equal within the arithmetic of life. We are watching ourselves as the players on a stage, playing our roles in a soap opera. This way, we can acknowledge that consciously or unconsciously that we have chosen those parts we are in any particular role. Realizing the things we say and do have consequences, and we will set up the next act in the drama of our existence. This way, we are not going to judge ourselves anymore, because those judgments require for us to pay the price, in which we lose self-confidence and self-esteem for our humanness, or the lack thereof does not permit us to live up to our ideals. When our habits of the unified self are more automated, we will find that we can create more high ideals without destroying ourselves by self-doubt and criticisms. Although some situations of life need a lot more attention from us, but we know that hatred and fear keeps us from finding the most effective long-run solutions to existence and challenges we face in life. This way, we open our eyes to situations of being a member of an endangered species with the power to self-destruct in this so-called nuclear age. Although we understand that the problem has very little to do with missiles and wars, because it is created in separate self-habits of everyone on the face of Earth. We understand that these me against you patterns cannot enable us to be happy or even to survive on this planet. Hopefully, we are beginning to understand that the only transition to unified self of mind will enable us to meet the challenges at this stage of our human evolution. The separate self creates a dangerous world. It is always on guard against people who would take advantage of it, or deceive it, or hurt it, or abuse it, or steal from it, lie to it, or cheat it. The danger lurks everywhere, and the more it guards itself, the more it attracts other separate self-energies, thus acting as a self-fulfilling prophecy, and the human's worst fears often proved to be justified. It's a very lonely and threatened life of the separate self, which undergoes a miraculous metamorphosis as one creates one's thoughts and actions through the unified self. The truth of the separate self, me against you, can only dissolve in the higher, equally the self-fulfilling truth of the united self, or unified self, with its me and you. This separate self hopes for and tries to use the energy of love, whereas the unified self is the energy of love. And the question is, what is love? The answer I can come up with is this. Love is a heart-to-heart feeling of togetherness and closeness, with no separating boundaries, that you create and maintain within yourself. Love tends to generate a two-way cooperation, mutual support, patience, forgiveness, compassion, peace of mind, and enjoyment of the miracle of existence. You don't need to agree with people. You just don't throw them out of your heart. And love is something beyond what words can point to. A feeling of this is as it is. This way, we all start seeing that a happy and fulfilling existence cannot be built upon getting more and more security, more sensations, more money, more fame, or feeling only one's pride. Your problem is of enoughness. Separate self-programming can never explain to us that we have enough security, enough power, enough money, enough fame, or enough of anything to create a serenity that feels like, now I've got enough. I can be happy. We need to deeply appreciate and love ourselves and others that we can sustain this glowing unified self-experience. It must be very clear by now that we must not demand loving thoughts and actions from others. Instead, we can trust that if we radiate love continually, it will be mirrored back to us in greater quantity and quality than we need to be happy. Remember the saying, what you shout at a mountain will echo back to you. By experiencing the unified self, we understand the secret of human life. Love is the answer, the foundation for a happy life. Unified self-love is always unconditional, no strings attached. One may not like what the other do or say, but one's love for the other remains unflickering through all the ups and downs of life. Somebody said the bookkeeping type of love generated by the separate self is not really love. It is the transaction between two people. It's like saying, I will love you as long as you love me and do what I want you to do. This is very brutal and independable, not lasting. The radiant love of the unified self is like the warmth of the sun that falls upon everyone. Sun's gift is bestowed even without regard to who deserves it, or who needs it, or who will return it. The ability to lift into transcendent new plane of fulfillment on planet Earth can be achieved only by empowering ourselves through the insight and love by the unified self. Love is a cornerstone of all spiritual paths. Only a very few people really hear this message, that love is the most powerful energy in the universe. Love can do what nothing else can. It really helps us achieve cooperation and support that would not otherwise exist from other people. Enable us to appreciate and understand as it increasingly frees us from me against you or me against them battles. Stress created by the separate self wears out at a very rapid rate. Scientific research shows that love offers us one of the keys to a more healthy body and longer life. In here, the unified self only enables us to appreciate our lives as adventurous and humorous games we choose to play. We are never as safe as when we radiate unconditional love. When others reflect respect, as they will inevitably do, they automatically will extend an umbrella of caring awareness, as it was said, that gives us the ultimate security. As we develop this understanding of the unified self with its me and you approach to life situations, we obviously create an experience of existence more effectively in the long run, which becomes more enjoyable and feels less like a roller coaster. If you are familiar with Lao Tzu, he says, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. We will now end this portion of the episode until we meet again by the next one. And until then, keep smiling and be happy. Thank you.